Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Patrick Donoghue here, news editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. The 3-day FTMTA show starts tomorrow and is a must-see event for all machinery lovers. Earlier in the week, I sat down with our machinery editor, James Maloney, to ask him what farmers should be looking out for. James, you're welcome.
Thanks, Patrick.
That's exactly it, the must-see events. What are farmers going to be coming out for? Where's the event taking place? And give us just a snapshot of what farmers are likely to see and machinery enthusiasts are likely to see over the next 3 days.
Well, look, the event is held in Punchestown in the exhibition centre there. This year there's an extra pavilion, so they're running 4 pavilion halls, and it's the highest number of exhibitors that has ever been at the show. They have 171 with 205 odd stands, both indoor and outdoor. So in terms of what to see, all the manufacturers use this as a kind of a platform to introduce machines to the Irish market. John Deere are using it to launch the new 5R series, which is their mid-farmer or middle-spec tractor.
What type of horsepower are you talking there?
You're looking at around 100 to 120 horsepower tractors. Ideally coming with a loader, typical for the stockman. There's a nicer cab on it with better vision, and there's also new controls on the loader. So it's a nice thing to pick up on at the show. So
talk us through the machinery sector, I suppose, as it is. Brexit maybe took a bit of a hit last year. Dairy prices, tillage prices. Are people buying tractors, and who are buying the tractors?
Look, we'll just start with Brexit there first, Patrick, since you mentioned it. Brexit, I'd say manufacturers had an initial fear of it, all right. We didn't know what it was, but as a lot of guys, if you look at England at the minute, they don't manufacture a whole lot. If you wanted an English baler, you probably wouldn't be able to buy an English baler. So if you need a McHale Fusion, you have to buy a McHale Fusion. The steel for buying that machine is coming from Europe, so it all has to be brought back through it, whether it's an English manufacturer or an Irish manufacturer. So the reports, the trade is still good. It took an initial impact, but what the reports are from the sector, that it's building back up again.
And tractor sales, you're reporting on that in this week in this week's Farmers Journal?
Tractor sales are back a little, Patrick. We've 333 tractors sold in January, back from about 390, I think it was, for last year, back 15%. Now, on the quarter, I wouldn't say that figure would be the same if we take a quarterly figure, but if we go back to the way the tractors are produced now, there's a 6-month lead time in it. So to buy a tractor in January, you had to be ordering the tractor 6 months ago, and there wasn't too much confidence in the sector then. Back around ploughing time, it was a little bit flat. There wasn't many inquiries going on. So I would say, look, it's back, but I'd remain confident that it's not going to be, at the end of the year or the end of the quarter, it's not going to be hugely different.
So James, take us through who are the people that's going to be buying at the FTMTA Farm Machinery Show this year. Will there be a chequebook in hand? Will there be spit in hand? Will there be deals done?
Well, look, there's loads of finance companies coming to it anyway, so if you don't come with the chequebook, you'll probably get sorted on some of the stands. What we're seeing at the minute, right from the industry, is that a lot of farmers are looking at more efficient ways of doing the work now, whether that's time related or coming down to fuel, or the whole thing is cost. So if your tillage farmers have came back into the market in December, kind of January, and with reports from the kind of leading guys in the cultivation side, it has been a busy trade right up until Christmas and into January as well. That's probably not going to stay going as the deals are made, as ploughs are changed or cultivators are bought. But definitely the vibe is that the tillage guy is not changing the tractor, but looking at the implements. So the bigger horsepower tractors aren't moving, and no doubt the imports of tractors coming in from the UK will also have affected that. Now, the smaller size stuff is moving nice and steady, not setting the world alight, but your tedders, your rakes, the mowers, good steady inquiries on it, like the 100 horsepower tractor as well. So that's kind of the bread and butter.
Grass and tillage farmers?
Predominantly more, like we reported on it last year in the Farmers Journal, like that the West of Oak for tractor sales. So a lot of tractors in the suckler end of the market, in the mixed farms, they were moving, and that made up our sales, 60% of our sales last year, I think.
Is it a case of, if a farmer has a hole in his or her welly, they'll buy a pair of wellies? If they need a tractor and a front loader, they'll buy a tractor and front loader?
Yeah, and if they need it, if you take a scenario where there's a man or a woman working part-time and they need to come home in the evening and have a reliable machine to get through the work, and if it's not starting, they don't have the time to fix it, and they don't, from a safety point of view, it's also dangerous if they have an unreliable machine, they're rushing, it's in the dark, and they're making the decision, well, how much am I spending on repairing this versus what I can get on finance for it or repayments? And if you couple that then with a little bit of tax relief on it, it might actually be a very wise investment to change the tractor rather than pursue with the older model.
So, looking back then, and finally, not just the tillage farmer, the livestock and the grass farmer is on the hunt for machinery.
Yeah. Now there's another part to the FTMTA show. It's the whole smart farming event. Smart farming, it's a buzzword out there at the minute. So we're trying to do everything more smart and efficient as we go along. But what we're going to look at, and we're doing this with the FTMTA, is like smart farming comes from an app right down to the highest level of GPS you can find on the tractor. Now, interestingly enough, not a lot of guys in Ireland are using variable rate technology for fertiliser application or for sowing or anything like that. We don't have the scale to go to that investment. But there is lots of equipment that we can invest in that will make the job more efficient. Like, if you can save overlapping on fertiliser by, say, 50 centimetres, well, you're probably reducing your fertiliser bill by 10 or 15% in the farm. So the unit is paid for in a couple of years.
So how many people are expected to walk through the doors?
Over the show, I think the FTMTA had 18,000 visitors in 2015. You'd be hoping that it'd be around the 20 mark. Thursday, normally a busy day, and Saturday is an extremely busy day. It's a family day, really. Everyone comes out. Part-time workers have the chance to come, and that's as we looked at the tractor sales, they're a big part of the industry now at the minute. So having the show open on a Saturday makes a lot of sense.
Great stuff. Thanks, James. And if you can't make it to this year's FTMTA Farm Machinery Show, you can catch up all the action live on farmersjournal.ie.
Thanks, Patrick.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
As the Areas of Natural Constraint Scheme review draws closer, the Irish Natura and Hill Farmers Association CAP chairman Colm O'Donnell outlined the organisation's 3-point proposal for the scheme to Irish Farmers Journal livestock specialist Nathan Tuffy.
As part of the review, we have the new areas that are going to be in the map. We cannot assume no longer that there will be mountain type land, lowland more severely and lowland less severely. So in this case, we can't take it as a given that there will be a specific category for the mountains. They are saying already in some of the organisations that you could land the specific in the lowlands. Up to 10% of the member state territory can be included, which is 690,000 hectares. If that happens, the farmers with the constraints on the land will eat too much of the budget away. So in our 3-point plan, we are looking to front load on the first 20 hectares to target the money at the farmers with small hectares of land. But more importantly than that, we want to have the specific constraint landed on uplands, an uplands constraint on the land with the highest level of constraint. And if we start there and work down to the ANC more severely handicapped land and then to the ANC less severely handicapped land. But if we go the other way around and support a lowland specific, we get no increase in the uplands without increasing the budget to over 300 million. And to get, at the moment in 2018, we're provided for 220 million. That has to be targeted, or the lowlands will end up with up on 150 million in the budget. And that's unacceptable. We will be highlighting this in Brussels, and we're looking for fairness in the scheme.
In terms of the maximum payment per hectare column, it was €109 per hectare for the first 10 as it was. What would you propose, or what would you like to see happen?
Well, the islands model for specifically constrained is €250 a hectare. So whatever areas are specifically constrained will be getting that level of payment. So €250 a hectare should go to the land with the constraints. So that would be front loaded on the first 20 hectares and then 170 on the next 14 and increase it up to 40, 70 on the last 6. But if it's a thing with budget requirements, we could still use our 3-point plan and that model, even if you doubled the current €109, to double that, it would bring us to 220, for example. That could be the starting point. Look at, I think the argument about dishing out the pie and the money is secondary. In the first instance, we've got to ensure that the mapping is done correctly and with accountability. And the provision is there in the regulation to give a digressive payment back to the farmers who lose out. And this can be done over a defined period of time, so that nobody loses out in a sudden manner. So that is where we stand at the moment.
Okay. And one last thing, Colm. If we go back to the CAP review, which happened back in 2014, 2015, little of the detail was really known until the last minute. You were saying earlier on that this review of the ANC payments has to be finalised, or the draft has to be sent to Brussels. Have you seen any indication of what's happening, or what would you like to say on that?
No, we have a response from the Minister saying that there will be a consultation process when the mapping is complete. I presume that's before any specific constraint is given in any direction, because that should be secondary. So I would say a word of warning. There's no need to drag the heels on this. This can be done and dusted within the time frame. We cannot tolerate a situation where we're penalised by 20% to everybody's payment because our rural development amendment doesn't go back in time with the ANC new delineated areas. So, we can't be foot dragging here. There could be a log jam. There are 198 rural development programs to have an ANC amendment put to them. So, we cannot tolerate a situation where in late September and October of 2018 that we don't get our ANC payments on time. So, we all need to pull together on this. It does look like here tonight in Donegal, in the room, that we have great support on the ground, and indeed with a number of the politicians.
Thank you, Colin.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Last week, we spoke to one of the two candidates in the Macra na Farmer President race, O'Deal Evans. This week, we caught up with the other candidate, James Healy, the former Munster Vice Chair of the organisation. Our news correspondent, Pat O'Toole, began by asking Healy why he wants the job and what he thinks he can bring to it.
You're in the race now, James, and work in the room here tonight at the National Leadership Awards. Macra presidency, fairly significant job on the national stage. I suppose, first of all, why do you want the job, and what do you think you can bring to the job?
I suppose the reason I want the job is I've been in Macra quite a long time, and I suppose it's been a huge part of my life, and I've gotten a huge amount out of it. I suppose, in fact, I probably wouldn't even be in the country if it wasn't for my involvement, because when I came out of college, I started into a job straight away. After 2 years, my job was with O'Donovan Engineering and with animal handling equipment, and when the grant went, there was no need for my job. And if I hadn't been involved in Macra at the time and been so tied, and it tied me back to my community, I should have gone to Australia and built up my life and my career from there. But my involvement in Macra kept me here, and I suppose that's why the organisation is so important to me. And I believe that I can bring a huge amount to the position. I've been Munster Vice President previously, and I suppose the work rate and the experience that I got out of that is something that I want to bring to the presidency. I think, we need to make sure that the member is at the centre of everything that we're doing, and every decision we're making is the right one for the members. And that means that you need to hear the voices of the members. And I suppose part of the campaign is going around and talking to as many of them as you can, and hearing what they have to say, and hearing their frustrations, and listening to them. And while you mightn't be able to fix them, at least they know you're listening to them and hearing them. And I think that's something that should continue into the presidency, because you shouldn't be just doing that every 2 years. You should be doing that on a continuous basis. And I think that, from a member's point of view, is one of the most important things that I would like to do during the presidency.
And what are those members saying to you? What do you perceive as the gaps, I suppose, in what Macra are doing, or any deficits that need to be addressed?
I suppose we've recently been having our strategic review meetings, and some of the big things that have come out of that is that communication in the organisation is vitally important. That be it communication between national office and membership, or between counties, or between clubs, or anything, that communication is hugely important, because if people are talking to each other, then that prevents anything that might grow into something bigger. And so if you can communication can nip those sorts of things in the buds. Transparency and honesty are two things that have really come out as well. I suppose you see what's happening in the charity sector, and Macra being a charity as well. It's very important to the members that we are seen to be whiter than white, that everything we're doing is above board, and that the members are getting value for their membership, and I suppose, look, no more than any other organisation, we get funding from the government as well, and we need to show that we are using that money, and it is public money, and we need to show that we're using that public money properly. And obviously, look, from the farming side of things, the cap is a huge thing, and the next president is going to have a huge job in pushing Macra's agenda in that. And I think the meetings that we've had around the country, we've had very well attended meetings. I think you were at one of them, Pat, and you saw the crowd that was there. It's going to be very important that we at least try. We may not achieve everything, but I think we need to pick some key points that Macra can push for young farmers, and that do our best to deliver on them, and that's going to take some tireless work as well.
What form is the campaign taking? It's branch voting, so each member votes within their own branch, and then it's PR within that branch. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I suppose with only two people in the race, it probably simplifies it a bit, but it's one club, one vote. So my own campaign, to be fair, I'm extremely lucky. I have a very strong club, I have a very strong region behind me, and on a weeknight like tonight, I'll come up here, and my girlfriend is here, but I'm very lucky that at the weekends and any night somebody is free, they'll hop in the car with me. There was a night last Friday, but the Friday before, I had a team at a quiz in Cavan, I had a team at Bingo in Kinsale, I had a team at a quiz in Kerry, and myself and my sister and a few more of us went to a quiz in Laois. So there's a huge amount of people behind me, and I suppose I think that if nothing else, that's a sign of me, and that I take that as a huge confidence boost, because if they're all willing to put in that work for me, it shows me that I'm going about things the right way and have gone about things the right way in the past. So the campaign is all about talking to as many people as possible. It's, when the time comes, making the calls, working, giving every hour of as much as you can to the campaign. And look, if you're serious about being president, that's what you have to do.
If there was one change as Macra president that you were going to enact, if there's one thing you could pinpoint that you will do if elected to the presidency, what would that be?
I think a huge part of my background in Macra is competitions, and I think we have some great competitions. We have debating, we have performing arts, and I think when you listen to Seamus there tonight and his time in Macra, and it's through those competitions comes the vast amount of the personal development opportunities, and I think we need to push that and show members that is how they need to make most of their experience in the organisation. They need to be entering those competitions and making the most of them, and I think it's through running workshops or having bigger counties mentor smaller counties, or working together, having the National Competitions Committee do different things. That's how we're going to push competitions. And if you have strong clubs, if you have strong competitions, you'll have strong clubs, and there may come a point where we'll have a even fuller schedule than we have now. But I think, given my own experience at competitions and stuff, I think that's where I see myself being able to have a huge impact.
James, the very best of luck, and thanks for this.
Thanks very much, Pat.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Opposition to the North-South interconnector, a new 400 kV overhead line linking the electricity grids of Ireland and Northern Ireland, is fierce in Ireland's northeast counties. Last week, our news correspondent, Amy Nora Fitzgibbon, met landowners just outside Kingscourt in County Cavan to talk to them about their concerns.
So I think if they are going there in Europe, it must be. It's going out here. The next pylon is going out in Darklands. Yeah. So it must be another angle one there. That must be kind of an angle one there as well.
This is a 60 degrees angle here.
Right,
the next angle one below is before it crosses the road. In Pat Kinley's, is it? Another thing I just should mention, there's a field down along the other road down there that my father left for 3 of his grandkids to build 3 houses on. And the wire was coming directly across that as well. So that's all gone now as well.
So this is Amy Fitzgibbon, news reporter with the Irish Farmers Journal. I'm here with Michael Farrelly and Charles Clark, 2 farmers from County Cavan who are being directly affected by the North-South interconnector, which recently got planning permission for onboard Planola for the southern section of the interconnector. So, Michael, I'll just go to you first. Where will the pylons be going on your land?
Well, they'll be going straight through the middle of the farm. It couldn't be any more direct through the middle of the farm. They'll be running right alongside the main sheds, and they'll not be any more than 10, 15 metres away from the cattle.
Okay.
And like, for me, I'm not happy about that.
And what kind of, I suppose, engagement has EirGrid had with you?
None whatsoever.
Okay. So have they given you a map of the route and told you where it's going to go?
Yeah, I've got maps. I've got all the literature from them, but I never spoke to any of them.
Right.
Only two in the very, very, very beginning. They said they were from DSB.
Right, okay. And when they got planning permission for the interconnector, the southern section, last December, was there any follow-up with yourself as the landowner?
No.
Okay. And Charles, it's the same issue with you. The pylons will be on your land?
Yeah, I have one pylon on the land.
Okay, and how close will it be to your home?
It's 80 metres away from where I was sitting there.
And have they discussed compensation with you at all? No. And how will it affect your farming practices, Michael?
Well, I don't know how it'll affect me farming practices. Like, I'm not going to even take that chance. People are all saying, oh yes, it'll be compensated for these pylons. Sure, it doesn't matter what compensation they give me. If they did give me X number of pounds, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, if I have a problem, where do I go? And I don't want the compensation. It's not about money. It's not about money. I just don't want the compensation. Doesn't matter how deep they go into the pocket. I don't want it.
So
but I want to be left the way I am.
And so I suppose that you do, Charles, as well.
Exactly, yeah. Like, our health is not for sale at the end of the day.
Exactly,
that's the bottom line. You can't put a value on your health, and that's what it is, unhealthy.
So you're worried about health concerns?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And can you identify with EirGrid's argument that the pylons can't go underground, that it'd be more expensive, or do you think they should make more of an effort to put it underground?
Of course you can. Sure, they'll come underground everywhere else. It went underground from Batterstown to Lusk and Dublin.
Okay.
And they said first there was no way they could do that, but yet they did do it. There's no problem putting it underground. They just don't want to do it.
And you feel the same way?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It seems to me that they want to bully on to do it overhead, regardless of what anybody thinks. And when you see Andy Kenny in the Dáil, I said that to you earlier, when you see Andy Kenny yesterday in the Dáil, and I'm turning around here and biting his hand and saying he's listening to the people, he's not listening to the people. And as I said, when you have Helen McEntee and Shane McEntee, two local, they're representative TDs of Meath, and they're hiding behind. At least Regina Doherty will come out and talk, was manly enough to come out and talk out. But the other two, they ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Okay. So, I mean, where do you go from here? What's your plan of action for dealing with the next stage of the process?
Well, we have Fianna Fáil behind us now.
Okay.
And they think they're going to sort it out in the Dáil, and it's the only place that's going to be sorted out. Like, we've done all we can. This has gone on now 10 years now.
Yeah.
And we're still no further on, and they're no further on. If they had to go and put it on the ground beginning, it would have been up and running now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they say then they're having the money to do it, and they're having the time to do it now. They had the last 10 years to do it.
Yeah, it's been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
A very long time.
10 years
yeah.
now.
10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll still be talking about it in another 10 years, I suppose.
Have you considered a petition or something like that to see if people would be happy to maybe have a referendum to see if they'd be happy to put it underground, if people would be happy to pay more in their bills to have it put underground? Have you considered that at all?
I don't know. No, I haven't considered that because I wouldn't be get into that. I don't know much in that area. But what I do know is, for the likes of me, I can't even consider them going through that because it's my livelihood finished.
Yeah.
If things go wrong with them cattle in that shed, it's my livelihood finished.
Yeah. And you said you also were looking for getting a site for, was it a family member?
Yeah, I had a daughter there. I have two sons that built further up the road. At the moment now, they are sorry they built up there at all.
Yeah.
Do you know, if this went ahead,
yeah.
And like my other lassie, she turned around, she was going to build a house there. That's out the window now.
Yeah. And it's absolutely beautiful, scenic country here. Like, do you think it would affect tourism?
Of course it would. I think it would. Okay. Do you know, like, who wants looking at them big pylons?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Charles and Michael, thank you very much.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
This week in Brussels, independent MEP Luke Ming Flanagan hosted a seminar on land use change and forestry, or LULUCF to you and I. LULUCF allows countries to offset greenhouse gas emissions through land-based activities that act as a carbon sink. Our market specialist Phil O'Neill was in Brussels this week, and he caught up with Luke Ming Flanagan after the seminar to ask him about his views on LULUCF.
Joined by Luke Ming Flanagan, MEP, who hosted this afternoon's seminar on LULUCF. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Luke Flanagan, what is your view on listening to what you've heard this afternoon from a range of speakers?
Well, it depends on who you listen to. If you listen to some of the farmer groups, they are worried about what implications it will have for farmers. Will it put more regulation down on them? Will they have to follow more rules? And then you listen to the Commission and you listen to some of the speakers, and they sell it as an overall good thing. And I would agree with the fact that we need to properly account for the greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture. How we do something about it is up for debate. I personally think the best way to deal with it is to close the loop as much as possible. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to fertilisers, we use as much non-chemical fertiliser as possible, and you close that loop there, meaning that you have less emissions from it. Also, we look at the type of animal that we are rearing, and I have been at an event here on proteins where it was quite clearly explained that the modern animal is the jet engine, in a sense. When it comes to what you have to feed it, you have to feed it top quality fuel. And there needs to be a discussion as to whether we need to go back to an animal that can be fed with products that can be grown in Ireland, as opposed to stuff that has to be imported.
So it's back to the future, almost the traditional Herefords and Angus breeds?
Well, potentially. And rather than someone going to the mart or going to the factory and saying they got X price for their animal, they might get 80% of X, but they might be able to rear more of them. And more importantly, their input costs will be down, their costs for fertiliser will be down, and also another way to mitigate against it, and all this has to be thrown into the mix, is, and I see this on a regular basis, is rainwater harvesting. At the moment, many farmers are using chlorinated water that comes from pumping stations, etc. Not by choice in a lot of cases. There needs to be incentives there to close that loop. And while some people might say it's going to be impossible to get zero emissions from rearing cattle, fine, but we can do everything possible to mitigate against that.
So you're of a view we have to tackle, we as a farming sector have to look at what we can do to the debate. We can't just wash our hands of it.
Well, it isn't so much that I'm of the view. That is the prevailing wind. That's the way it goes.
And in fairness, you had a cross-section of speakers today on the subject.
And whether I would agree with the fact that climate change is man-made or not, at this stage, is irrelevant. This is the policy that has been adopted. This is what we're going to face. And I think there are things that we can do that will actually reduce our carbon footprint. But not only that, it will reduce our input costs. And I'm also a shadow on a fertilisers file here at the moment, on the new fertilisers regulation, that will make that more possible if the person, Jan Huitema, the MEP, if they go the direction he wants to go in, and I'm also supporting that, and it will make it more viable. And then people in agriculture will be able to stand up and say, we are doing absolutely everything we can do. And at that point, if they're doing everything that can be done, there's one thing that isn't going to change in the debate. We're going to need to be able to eat, and there is going to be an increasing world population, and we're going to have to feed that. So there will be emissions, but what we've got to do is minimise them. And whether we go down the agroforestry route, as Patrick Worms was suggesting, less of the monoculture that we currently have, which potentially could lead to greater yields, we need to look at that.
Did you find his argument persuasive?
The reason why I invited him here is because I heard him say it before, and it excited me, because you hear nothing but bad news, and this guy seems and appears to be delivering good news. Now, you've got to apply every system to each area, and it might work out different in different areas. But from what he says, and this was being done in France, I think it's not going to be that much different in Ireland. And in order for that to happen, he used a great phrase: we need a change from this cultural inertia, whereby what he was talking about was the Commission pushing people in a certain direction, or the perception, or the sole perception by national governments that the Commission is pushing people in a certain direction, such as the 100 trees. That needs to change. And with a lot of minor changes, you could achieve an awful lot. But let's get real. We're never going to get zero emissions. It's impossible.
Right. Finally, we're moving into the consultation on the Common Agricultural Policy, the 2021.
Yes.
What will your priorities in it be?
My priorities will be that what the former Commissioner Kiolas said shouldn't happen. This cap would just be a fig leaf for convergence, that actually it will not be a fig leaf for convergence. It will be real convergence, because at the moment too much money goes to the rich guy and not enough to the small farmer. And the basic figures that are out there, not exact, but the idea that 80% of the money goes to 20% of the richest farmers is wrong. And then there is this perception out there that it's right because they produce more. Well, the figures we have is that 20% only produce between 27 and 30% of what is produced in this country. So if you're getting 80% of the subsidies to produce 30% of the food, that's wrong. I want to change that.
Should we go back entirely to a production-based system where those that done the work got the money?
There's certain merit to that, definitely, because it does help the economy if you have more production in an area. But the problem we have is World Trade Organization rules and the idea that you'll be able to connect it to production. It's meant to be decoupled, it's meant to be separate.
And yet France manages to give €200 a cow or something like that.
And that's no surprise, because France is a big country and it does what it wants. We do what we're told, unfortunately.
Do you feel that there will be radical change in this camp? Is the mood in Brussels for radical change, or will it just be tinkering?
It's actually a very good question, because you have this perception when you come out here that people who are in set political groups, let's say like the EPP, that because Fine Gael are in that group and Fine Gael have espoused a certain policy, which is the one that's currently there that I've just spoken about, that they would be thinking similar to everyone in EPP. That is not the case. In fact, there are people in the EPP who are just as gung-ho for more convergence and for potential flattening of payments as I am. And one example would be, I was in a taxi from the airport one day with an Italian MEP, a German-speaking Italian MEP from northern Italy, because they actually speak German there. I discovered he was in the EPP and I said, sure, here's my opportunity. I wonder what his opinion on it is. And he was in the exact same position as I was, and in the same position as Keolis was in the last round of talks. And I am getting the impression from the Budget Control Committee, because there's an EPP member there as well, who regularly talks on budget discharge and value for money, and he regularly complains about the Queen getting a big payment, regularly complains about people getting massive payments, and actually wants to see the maximum payment put back to €50,000. So from the point of view of what support would I get, actually there's an awful lot of support here. But what happens when it goes back to Ireland? And this is an irony for me. I'm saying that, look, Ireland is a sovereign state. We should make up our own mind at the end of the day. That's great, but if it means that farmers that got screwed in the past get screwed again, well, that's a difficult one for me. But I hope they do the right thing. My position is that 80% of money that goes to the 20% of farmers, that needs to be turned on its head.
Lickman, Flanagan, thank you very much.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday.
Wigtownshire livestock farmer Andrew McCormick has been named as the new president of the National Farmers Union Scotland. Our Scotland editor John Slee interviewed the new president at the NFU Scotland AGM this week, and he began by asking him what his priorities are as president.
I'm joined here by the new president of the NFU Scotland, Andrew McCormick. First of all, congratulations. What are your priorities for the first wee while as president?
Well, thank you for the congratulations. I'm still a bit shocked in this one, but priorities, I think we need to get a proper strategy pulled together on Brexit, what we're going to be doing with that. But there's still a lot of current short-term stuff we need to do. We're still within Europe. We've got to get our Belfast thing sorted out, and we've got a lot of stuff that we've been getting promises today on greening, but there's a lot to do for the combinable crops and all the other sectors. We need to get something really moving, and I hope we've got the energy there now to do it.
Brexit's at the front of everyone's mind at the moment, and certainly with our red meat sector. Do you have concerns about Brazil, South America sending beef into the UK, or what's your message for our government to prevent that from happening?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that Andrea Leadsom said at the Conservative Party conference. She was not going to allow substandard, not up to the same quality as what we're producing into the country. We'll definitely be holding her to task on that. We've got to have up to the premium value of what we're doing. We're not wanting to undermine the poorer quality product.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
John then caught up with Fergus Stewart Ewing, the Scottish Government's Cabinet Secretary for the Rural Economy and Connectivity, to ask him what he was looking to get out of Tuesday's AGM.
I'm joined here with our Cabinet Secretary, Fergus Ewing. I was just wondering, what are we looking to get out of today at the NFU conference in Scotland?
Well, I wanted to obviously to emphasise how closely we work with the NFU, and I've had an excellent relationship with the outgoing President Alan Bowie, and I've already agreed to meet in early course the new President Andrew McCormick and his team. It's right that we work closely together, and I made an announcement of a measure which has been welcomed, namely of changes to the greening rules, 3 particular small changes. I would have liked to have done more, but we don't want to make the CAP payment IT system even more complex than it is already. We are, however, forming a committee chaired by distinguished former public servant Professor Russell Griggs, OBE, who will bring together farmers and others, including experts from the QMS and scientists and NGOs, in order to look at future greening, and we will publish our analysis of some of the measures that the NFU in Scotland have asked for. Of course, we want to secure farmers' buy-in to greening measures. I think all farmers are custodians of the landscape in Scotland and do a great job, and they want to do even more and meet climate change targets and imperatives, but they want to do so in the knowledge that what they're doing is practical, it's working, it's something that is also efficacious in terms of business profitability, using, for example, the right amount of nitrates, fertilisers, as opposed to overmuch. Obviously is less expensive, and it's also good for the environment. So the two can go hand in hand. So we want farmers to carry out soil testing, for example. They should do that, and we need to, I think, demonstrate the efficacy of testing as a precursor to more sustainable farming. That's just one of the measures that the group will discuss in detail. On a wider note, the big questions, of course, are the future of funding, and I mean, I took the opportunity in the Q&A session to spell out our concerns that the UK government, and we're only now just 2 years away and a bit from their inception of Brexit, of leaving the EU, they have provided no plans whatsoever about the financial level of funding. I pointed out that during the Brexit referendum campaign, Mr Eustace said that the funding would be at least matched, of around $3 billion in total for the UK, and he said that would be the case, and I quote, without a shadow of a doubt, end quote. Well, the UK government must now deliver that pre-referendum pledge, and yet here we are nearly a year after the referendum, and we have not a single scintilla of a plan for the funding. Now, we obviously have power over agriculture, but not over the funding. That is the reserve matter. CAP is the reserve matter. The responsibility is 100% with Andrea Leadsom to provide clarity, and so far they have been derelict in their duty, I'm afraid. However, despite their cancellation unilaterally of a meeting recently, which was supposed to consider these matters, we are hoping that they will meet with us fairly soon, and we will be most strongly pressing the case, and in that respect we'll be working with, for example, the Welsh administration there anent.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
And finally, with spring just around the corner, thoughts are turning to the annual summer holiday. Aisling Hussey caught up with Irish Country Living consumer editor Ciara Leahy to find out how to get ahead of the curve.
With freezing temperatures this week, summer can seem very far away. However, now is the perfect time to start planning your summer holidays. This is what consumer editor Ciara Leahy is writing about in this week's Irish Country Living. Can you tell me more?
Hi Aisling, yes, so the sun on your face, the warm evenings, remember that feeling, God, on this cold day, it seems very far away. But look, half the excitement of a holiday is the anticipation, and even if you missed out on some of the January sales, because there was a good few for booking your holidays, now is the time to get booking. It might only be February, but chances are you're actually behind the crowd at this stage. For this article, I actually spoke to Cormac Meehan, who's the president of the Irish Travel Agents Association, and he says that now that people are booking earlier and earlier each year, that nearly 25% of travellers actually book their holidays before Christmas for the following year, and a further 30% are booking it in the first quarter. So really it is time to kind of get on board with it. I also spoke to Click and Go CEO Paul Hackett, and he said that forward bookings for 2017 are also well up on this time last year. So the first 3 days of the month in January were well up on the same 3 days in 2016.
Grand. So where are people heading to this year?
So a lot of people still heading towards the sun. I think the sun is always going to attract us, especially because our summers are so unpredictable. So Lanzarote, the Algarve, Tenerife, Salou and Costa del Sol. Look, no big surprise they're ashing. They are the Spain, the Portugals. They're where people are heading, and even more so than in previous years, because places like Turkey and Egypt were also popular destinations, but because of that they're not those safe haven destinations anymore, people are a bit more cautious going there. The amount of charter flights have really seriously decreased going to those destinations, and I suppose that's not just for Irish travellers. The likes of the travellers from the UK, German travellers, nobody's going to them, so there's more and more people heading to the Spain destinations and Portugal.
And has this driven up prices?
Yeah, I suppose prices kind of stayed stable enough last year, but because especially prices are kind of going up a bit in Portugal because they had such good demand last year, so the prices are going up slightly.
And when is the best time to travel to get the best deals?
Obviously, a lot of readers are going to be restricted by summer holidays, the school summer holidays, but if you can get outside those school summer holidays, you're going to get the better deals. May is always a great month to travel. Look, your chances of good weather aren't as definite as the likes of July and August, but the likelihood is pretty high that you're going to get warm weather, and the cheaper prices can make the risk worth it. So, for example, Aisling, you can get 7 nights in a 4-star Part Hotel in Praia de Ve in the Algarve, and that's coming in about $799 for 2 adults and 1 child, with Click and Go. Now, choose that same holiday in the middle of August, and you could be looking at double the price. Really, timing is key, and if you can, as I said, get outside those school holidays, you'll be doing well.
And if you have a little bit more money to spend, where would you recommend?
Cruises are really popular, just from speaking to people in the industry. I suppose the thing about cruises, though, again, you need to start planning. You need to really get your skates on for this. People tend to go on a cruise for special occasions, so anniversaries or, a big holiday that they've been saving up for a few years, or honeymoons. So if you're very specific about what you want or have key requirements, such as a room with a balcony or something like that, you need to get your skates on. But look, there's still good sales in place. Royal Caribbean at the moment are offering deals for such as 60% off your second guest, while a further 30% off third and fourth guests. And if you're really organised, there's also an option where you can plan this year's trip, and next year's you'll get you can get 50% off next year's trip by booking the two of them together. But again, you need to get in before the 6th of March for them. Also, another thing to look at is what's kind of rising in popularity is river cruises in Europe. I suppose what's really attracting people from that is you're looking at smaller boats with an average capacity of about 130 guests. So in the morning when you're going on excursions, you've far less people getting off the boat, far less people getting on the boat in the evening. So it's a little bit more luxurious. Also, there's a little bit more culture with them as well. You've got, with Uniworld, you've got the likes of castles along the Rhine, and you've got Rhine Main Discovery, which travels from Munich to Cologne. It's really kind of a more cultural holiday.
Cool. And also, camping in France is always a popular destination.
Look, you have the sun, you have campsites for kids, you've got the glorious weather, you've got the French wine. I mean, it ticks so many boxes, and it's really, really popular for Irish families. At the moment, you can get, they had really, really good sales in January, but you can get a 15% saving if you book before the end of February for 4 people travelling on return sailings from Cork to Roscoff. So that's still worth looking at for selected campsites.
And when we think of camping in Ireland, we just think of a tent and like a field and miserable and cold.
It's a bit more luxurious in France. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're kind of tailor-made, aren't they? So finally, Ciara, how are trips to the States faring?
So actually, I suppose because of the whole coverage around the whole Trump administration, because the euro is weak compared to the dollar, you wouldn't think that the States is actually a very popular destination this year. But from speaking to those in the travel industry, over 35,000 visitors attended the Holiday World Show in January, and despite the controversy, the Visit USA Pavilion was exceptionally busy, and they're showing very strong bookings for the States. I suppose, look, it's the States, it's a lot more accessible than it used to be. You've airlines such as Aer Lingus starting up a Connecticut route, which is opening up that whole New England area. There's now direct flights to LA. Aer Lingus have recently announced that they're looking at direct flights to Vegas, so it's a lot more accessible. I think that's very attractive to people. But yeah, bookings for the States are strong. But I suppose wherever you're thinking of going, now is the time to get looking, because giving yourself that advance notice means you are probably going to get the better deals.
Great. Well, thanks very much. You're going to inspire me now to book my holiday. Thanks.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.